There are 5 different mistakes that people commonly make during conversations that basically derail their connections. Now, likely you don't make all 5 of these mistakes, but I bet you're guilty of at least a few. Now, this first one is going to be more common to introverts, and that is you may assume that you don't really have much going on, or that you're boring, or nobody's going to really be interested in what you have to say. So you tend to be more reserved and quiet and not really contributing to a conversation. You'll answer questions if people ask you questions, but you don't really offer up any into the conversation as far as starting a new topic or as far as asking probing questions to someone else. And as a result, the other person has to carry the weight of the conversation. And it can be really exhausting when you're the one that's trying to carry the other person along and trying to think of things to ask them and topics of conversation. It can be exhausting. And a lot of times, if people have to do that, they will leave the conversation and go start a conversation with somebody who is easier to talk to. So if you're guilty of this, and many introverts are, I have to be very intentional about, does anybody really care to hear what it is that I have to say? But the secret is to come to an encounter with another person, not only come prepared with questions to ask the other person, but also to come prepared with conversation about yourself, about what's going on with you. How will you answer somebody if they say, hey, what's been going on with you? To actually think ahead of time, when somebody asks me that question, what can I say that really is going on with me to help start a conversation with the other person? The second mistake can commonly be made by extroverts, and that is going the other extreme and dominating the conversation, meaning you are doing most of the talking, and the other person is your audience for you to talk at them instead of with them. It's not a two-way conversation, but you're dominating the conversation. Sometimes extroverts do this because they like to talk or because they're uncomfortable with silence. However, remember, it needs to be a dialogue instead of a monologue. No matter how interesting you are, no matter what all you have going on in your life, nobody really wants to just be an audience and listen to you the entire time. If they're connecting with you, they really do want it to be a two-way conversation. And it's not like it has to be 50-50, but think about the percentage, the amount of time that you're doing the talking. Are you talking like 90% of the time? Is the other person not able to really talk at all because you're talking so much? Let me also point out that dominating a conversation might also be dominating the subject, meaning, and this can be indicative of introverts and extroverts, and that is if you just want to talk about the subjects and the topics that really interest and energize you, and you want to stay on those topics. And if the person starts on another topic, you want to bring it back to the thing that you want to talk about. If you think about it, it really is selfish and self-centered when you choose that, no, we're going to talk about this because this is what interests me. Mistake number 3, and that is you can dismiss another person way too soon, because sometimes when we meet people and we are first starting to have a conversation with them, sometimes we totally click. They like the things that we like, and they want to talk about the things that we want to talk about, and there's just this synergy, and it can be really energizing. But have you ever met people like that? And then over time, the more and more you talk to them, you're thinking, wow, I don't really click with them as much as I thought I did. And then there's other people that you may think that you really don't have hardly anything in common with, or you have totally different interests. And yet the more that you spend time with them, maybe in this situation, it's that you're forced to spend time with them. Maybe you're working on a project together, or you're stuck in a space with them and you're making conversation. And the more that you talk to them, the more you realize that you really do have things in common. So the idea is, don't make the mistake of dismissing people too soon. It's kind of like, don't judge a book by its cover. So in the same way, don't dismiss people too soon. Now, the next mistake that people make is trying to impress someone. And we've all done this at some time or the other, but to mainly be intentional about it. And no matter how bad we're wanting to make a good first impression with someone, or we're trying to really befriend another person, resist the temptation to try to impress them. I remember when I was single many years ago, and I would go out on first dates with guys. I remember one of my common frustrations is how many of them would spend almost the entire date telling me, basically trying to prove what a great person they are and how successful they were. And I would leave feeling just so depleted because I thought, wow, this person just seems to be interested in puffing themselves up and talking about themselves. And that's one of the things that interested me so much when I had my first date with my husband, is he wasn't talking about himself. He wasn't trying to impress me. Instead, he was focused on asking me questions and trying to get to know me. And when I did ask him questions about himself, he didn't puff himself up. He was just really a real, authentic person. And what I realized over time is these people who are trying to impress others is really a sign of insecurity. That's why they're doing it in the first place. They feel insecure about how they're showing up, so they're trying to prove themselves. So resist the temptation to try to impress. It's not attractive. In fact, sometimes we can do it in kind of an indirect way, and it's called humble bragging. And I've got a video above and in the description below that talks all about humble bragging that you can check out and see if you've ever been guilty of that. I have. Now, this next one, I am not proud to say, but I am still really guilty of this, even though I am constantly trying to work on it. So I'm just trying to be transparent with you all. And that is the conversation mistake of interrupting. Now, some people interrupt because they do like to talk a lot, and they can't stand it when the other person is talking because they just feel like they have to get their words in. Or other people, even introverts like me, will interrupt because we're excited and somebody may have mentioned something that we want to chime in on. And so we mean well, but still it's the same result. When you're interrupting someone, it's like verbally stepping on their toes in conversation. Nobody likes to be interrupted. And that leads me to a piece of advice, and that is, with any of these 5 things, when you are intentional about it, and you're not going to be perfect every time, but when you're intentional about it and you catch yourself, to actually say to the other person, I am so sorry. I have been doing so much of the talking. Let me hear more about you, and go into asking them some questions. Nobody is a perfect communicator, and when we're intentional, we catch ourselves and voice our mistake, people are usually very forgiving. People will usually receive your apology and really appreciate the fact that you're trying to be a better conversationalist. Now, are there certain conversation mistakes that really frustrate you about other people? If so, put those in the comments below so that we can all learn from each other. And if this video has been helpful for you, I hope that you'll share it with someone else. Thanks for watching.